Okay, it's 1:30, so let's kick off. I've forgotten the number of this session. I think it's C102. It's the Future of CDNs. That's not there, isn't it? C201, there you go. I'm being backwards for the morning. So, I'm going to start by asking the panel to introduce themselves first, then I'm going to do a little preamble. So, going from right to left, if I can ask Miles, if you could just introduce yourself with your name, your company, and your role.
My name is Miles McWilliams. I work for Deutsche Telekom. I'm based here in the UK. I'm head of global sales for IP and CDN, looking after the wholesale market and connecting to our network on an IP sort of side, and we're reselling currently a CDN solution.
All right, my name is Mike Smith. Work for Mirror Image, and I'm based on the west coast of the United States in California. And we specialize, we're a CDN, like others here on the panel. And I'm a sales engineer for them. I've been with them for almost a year and a half. Before that, I came from the CDN customer side. So I worked for a number of different large broadcast entities in the US, and I was a customer of CDN. So I have an interesting side of both the customer and the business side.
So Jason Tebow with Limelight Networks. What can I say about Limelight? One of the top, largest, biggest networks in the world, big physical network. We've been a CDN for a long time. We've recently sort of branched into more value-added services and incremental services on top of CDN. I'm in charge of marketing strategy, so I set a lot of the position and how we address the market and talk to the market. Pass it on. There's really nothing more to say about that.
I'm Steph. I'm the founder of Jetstream and Streamzilla. So Streamzilla is the European CDN for video streaming. We're not going into added values. We are a pure play streaming provider. We only do streaming as a CDN. And Jetstream helps telcos to deploy their own CDN. So far we've deployed about 30 CDNs. The last one was a 1 terabit per second CDN in Russia for Rostelecom.
And I'm James Fletcher from CDN.net. Most of you probably never heard of us. We are a federated CDN. So unlike the guys who own the networks, we're using multiple hosting providers to provide a global reach.
Great, excellent. Okay, so just a quick straw poll on the audience here. Are there CDNs in the audience? A quick hand or a pen raise if you haven't got the energy. There you go, we've got a pen over there. How about broadcasters and people who use CDN services to get content out? Okay, oh, that's a good representation, that's cool. And end users, consumers, or device manufacturers? Okay, I think we kind of got the
Anyone that cares about CDN?
People who are in the wrong conference, please do. Okay, so a little bit of background for me. I'm a contributing editor for Streaming Media magazine. I tend to wax lyrical and voice my opinion on things pretty unanalytically quite a lot. I have a bit of a background around my own CDN for a while, and I seem to be currently chair of CDN World Forum, Video Infrastructure Summit, Content Delivery Summit, and CDN World Summit. So, yeah, for what that's worth, it means I seem to wax lyrical about CDNs a lot. My own company, we build workflow software, strangely. We do sometimes implement CDN technologies, but we do a lot of encoding work and that sort of thing as well. And I've been in the streaming space slightly less time than Steph has, by about 6 months, I think we worked out. So, before we look at the future of CDNs, let's check we're all on the same sheet. And I'd like to briefly look at the history of CDNs and what they've come to, what that term has come to mean. I wrote an article recently for the magazine highlighting that a search on Google at the time, it's probably changed since then, but a search for the term CDN on Google listed Akamai, Limelight, Mirror Image, CD networks after page 10. So if you type CDN into Google, none of the major CDNs come up. So I'd like to kick the discussion off with understanding why CDNs don't appear to want to market themselves outside of the streaming media context as CDNs. So I'm going to work from left to right. So, James, can I kick that off with you?
Yeah, sure. We're kind of a new player, so I don't know whether we were in that search. I assume we probably were. We find it quite interesting, actually, that people have steered away from the CDN term because actually what we see constantly is marketing people putting more fluff on top of CDN and calling it something like Transact, and that being a specialist solution. But actually, it's just CDN. It's a delivery mechanism, and it doesn't need to be any more than that because that's what you guys do on top of a CDN network. We just need to focus on the delivery mechanism and leave you guys to build your solutions on top with the right guidance, the right APIs, the right integrations.
Steph?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So CDN is core, and you can debate about what kind of technologies you use internally or not, and whether you overlay on multiple infrastructures or not, or offload to others, or have your own infrastructure. But a CDN is a CDN.
Jason?
Yeah, no, I think, from our perspective, despite rebranding our products, we've called out now content delivery. So we recognize that CDN has a cache with a lot of our customers in exactly that, in the operational mechanisms to get content from point A to point B. So we're not calling it a CDN, although we're starting to use that term more in our content as a way to organically improve search. But ultimately, when we talk about content delivery, for us, it's really just an application on the network.
Yeah, like Jason, we still have that term, that CDN term out there from a search perspective, because people know that term. We felt the term actually was a little bit, kind of put you in a box as far as content delivery, being caching, object delivery, streaming and such. We've actually gone away from calling ourselves a CDN, and we actually call ourselves a DDN, which is a dynamic delivery network, because of some of the value-added services that are outside of the box of traditional CDN.
So from my view, obviously being a telco, which is a bit different from that sort of side. The CDNs today, CDN, everybody knows what CDN is, and it's very much, the organizations now are very much targeting who they're wanting to target and what sort of organizations they're wanting to target. If you look at application acceleration, so then the Akamai's, the CD networks and Edgecast, and then will be very much focusing on a particular type of words. So it's very much who's the pool and what type of market each person is looking for. So become a lot more clever in the way that targeting. And again, I've just done like you've done now on the Google, and CDN. It's a commodity from that side. It's now how do you attract people in the right manner.
Okay, so CDNs have morphed, and I think you guys talked about value adds. There seems to be an interesting spread as we went from left to right, where we've got sort of the more bespoke, aggressively focused on particular strata of the streaming space in Steph's case, and that more specific attention to detail in one application space and so on. And I've noticed, big CDNs, thinking particularly of Limelight taking over Delve, you kind of went into the OVP space and so on. This is something that I think would probably be challenging for some of the people in the audience who are becoming your customers, if there's a sense that actually they may be your customer today, but tomorrow they may be your competitor. So actually I'm going to start that question in the middle of the table with Jason because of the example I gave. How are you managing the transition as you make acquisitions and you broaden your market offering? How are you avoiding annoying your existing customers as you become their competitors?
Right, so the biggest problem is focus, right? So customers, in providing customers CDN, as we expanded, the biggest issue we faced was, oh my gosh, Limelight's not a CDN anymore, they're not focused, they're doing all this other stuff. We went through a very painful process, and so we, over the past 18 months, have really worked to integrate all of the stories we have around our services that we've acquired. So we acquired a web content management system, we acquired an OVP, we acquired a front-end acceleration company. We've tried to take those stories and bring them under an overarching framework, and now we're in a period of transition. So we're managing the transition with our existing customers to say CDN is just an application that's part of this bigger framework. Some people hate it, other people, I got it, I get it, that works great for me. So it's really just, it's a long-term marketing strategy that we're in the middle of, and it's working well, we feel, but it's a rough road to sow. We get focused complaints all the time.
Okay, and Steph, I'm going to consult you because you mentioned
with Streamzilla, over half of our revenue is coming from resellers who are OVPs, so we would never get into their territory. That would we would kill our business, and we have the fortunate position that we make money from the streaming itself, and we have good margins, so we don't have to go into value-added services.
Okay, and actually jumping across to the telco space, if you follow the same path, say, that Limelight's followed, and as you develop CDN products, you then broaden into some of the value-added services that CDNs do, does this mean that the telco is going to become a broadcaster?
Going to become a
or publisher then maybe, or a CDN customer?
The thing with the telcos currently is we don't have our own infrastructures at all, so we can very much pick and choose what we're wanting to take to the market. So if you're looking at a value-added service, I can go out and I can find a particular company that specializes in X. I can go to another company that specialises in Y, and I can package them all together. Where customers like that because they're wanting a one-stop shop, and there's no sort of how can you say it? There's no sort of issues about all of a sudden the company's diversing from typically what they've done in the past to the future. If you look at a typical sort of CDN player, they very much are involved in trying to bring out new products and that, and people feel that typically what they had from the streaming point now the CDN is sort of moving away from that and specialising more in an application side. What is my performance going to be like? So from a telco, we can pick and choose. When the telcos become more of an infrastructure as a service, again, we very much want to stay away from all of that and offer the customer the picks of the right sort of technologies in the marketplace.
So I'm going to ask the same question to Mike and James. So Mike.
Yeah, no, ironically enough, similar to Limelight and their growth, we chose the term dynamic delivery network because we felt, again, that CDN kind of puts you in a more narrow box. And as we grow and as we grew, and we added more services like our edge computing framework platform, which is logic at the edge and being able to do like mobile device detection and some of these advanced features. As we added that, as we built our OVP and did different things, we became less and less of a black and white content delivery network. Content delivery to me, as both a customer and as now working in the field, is the delivery of bits and bytes of video and data. And at the end of the day, we do a whole lot more, like others on the board here, than just that. So we felt expanding and using that dynamic term kind of helps to tell our story.
Sure, and James, you've got a slightly different model maybe.
Yeah, we're completely different again. I think what you have to think about is why do these companies have to do this? They have to change their marketing strategy because they have to pay for the infrastructure that they own, because it's a really expensive business to be in. And that's what, if you read Dan Rayburn's blogs, he goes on about it time and time again and says, why are we getting more CDN players into the market when it's such an expensive business to run? Again, this is where the federated model comes in, because we don't have to try and cover our costs of running this infrastructure. These hosting providers across the globe that we're working with are already doing that. They host these things really well. We just connect it up and act as a broker for you guys to build your own CDN network that's specific to you. And that way, we don't have the costs of running that infrastructure. So we're just passing on straight costs to you guys, and you're getting the full network.
Okay, so I'm going to... Oh, sorry, Stefan.
Well, actually, with Streamzilla, we do the same. We don't own infrastructure because, in our view, and that's our strategy as well, everything that's a commodity, don't do it yourself because anyone else can do it better and cheaper. So use those commodities, use those infrastructures that others have already been deploying. Networks, housing, data centers, cloud infrastructure, storage, outsource everything. We even outsource remote hands. So of course we have expensive SLAs, but that's still cheaper than to do everything ourselves around the globe or in Europe. The focus is on the management part, the APIs, the web interfaces, the logic behind the routing, the distribution, the log processing, everything. That's where the focus is.
Okay, so broadly, just to say, I feel like there's a fork in the road in the conversation here. There's the topic of whether the CDN as a term, as a topic that people are going to be searching for on Google in 3 years' time is going to exist. And on the other side of it, we need to, which I promise you we will go into a deep technical dive in a minute or two. But let's look at this theory that, the future of CDNs, is this going to be a marketing term that's expired in 3 years' time? So, again, let's go from right to left.
I don't think so. It's still going to be there. It's, telcos are all spending a huge amount of money looking at how best to invest in their infrastructure. And we're going to require a CDN in the market, either secret source or we build our own. And typically telcos have failed twice now, if we look at the market sort of trends in that. So CDN will be there. There will be a word that will be out there, but I think it will be a lot more clearer in the way that people will be looking for specific requirements that will fit their needs in the marketplace. And it's going to be how do we catch those in the tags or in the search fields then moving forward. So I think people are going to become a lot more precise in what they're looking for and what they're wanting from the marketplace going forward.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think the term's going to go away. The old term like a telephone line. While we have cell phones and everything like that, that term is still accepted and understood. I think CDN is going to stick around as a marketing term for a while longer. I think the focus has shifted in recent years with the introduction of Amazon and some of these other players that break out of the traditional CDN model from Alkaline, Limelight, and such. But I think there'll be a refocus on what exactly is a CDN versus a federated CDN, and versus a infrastructure provider or a cloud infrastructure provider such as Amazon.
Jay?
Yeah, no, I think it becomes a matter of function. Much to what Miles said, is that it's less about the term CDN. That's a marketing term, so just toss it out there. Companies are really going to look for delivery. I need help delivering. I need a service provider to help me deliver my content because I don't want the infrastructure. So they'll look to Amazon. They might look to a private provider like a Limelight. They might look to a private provider like CDN.net. It doesn't matter. But the term delivery and the function of delivery is going to be critical. I think I saw some stat, and I don't quote me on this, but it was might have been Cisco, but somebody said I think like 66 or 69% of all content on the internet is going to be delivered via CDN in like 2 or 3 years or something like that. So I think more and more businesses are recognizing I don't want to do this. This delivery part is not my core business. I got to offload it.
I think it's good that there's a diversification in the market, because if everyone is just saying we're a CDN and we do exactly the same, then everything will be a commodity and no one will ever make any money, right? And a lot of CDNs have a hard time in making money from specific services. So it's good that they focus. I mean, you mentioned Dan Rayburn's blog. He mentioned that Akamai clearly stated in the market in the US that they walk away from some streaming deals. It doesn't have their attention anymore. They want to go for enterprise, for cloud, for security. Great. Have them have that business. We'll go for the streaming part, right? So I think that's good.
James?
Yeah, I think I agree with Steph's comments and Miles' comments. I think CDN is going to be around for a while. I think it becomes then more a case of what do the customers who are buying CDN actually want, and how do you get that at the best possible price, the best plugins to your current infrastructure and other platforms, and that's probably the key.
Okay, so again, we've got a fork in the road. Let's look at price. Price is always a topic, and it's the endless chase to zero or something along those lines. I don't know. I see a lot of the innovation in the space as an attempt to sort of contra that flow to an extent, which then probably on the technical side leads us down into the whole consolidation of delivery over HTTP. But let's stick with price for a second. Are we seeing a levelling out in pricing? Are you all still fiercely competing on price? Is every sale on price? I was talking to one of your ex-employees in one of your companies yesterday who said he moved out of the CDN space because he just got bored of talking about price. He liked the technology, he liked the function of the technology, he liked the end user effect, but he didn't like sitting in sales meetings talking about price. So, again, from the right.
Well, I always get my balls busted every day from the CDN providers wanting access into our network that we keep at a very high price. We want to make sure that we keep the eyeballs and we have a value to our network. So price is always a big issue for me. The CDN is always trying to bring me down on the pricing. It then becomes very difficult as well when we start talking to local broadcasters within Germany itself. They are also very much looking at price. I don't know if anyone's from level 3 yet, but please stop what you're doing, because it's destroying their business and it's destroying everybody else's business, and they continue to grow. But we are starting to see the likes of level 3 and that start sort of leveling up on the pricing now, because it has hurt them. They have a huge market out there from a streaming point of view. And typically a lot of the CDN providers are moving away from that. They're wanting to get away from the streaming because the price is being pushed so low. And looking now, where's the value-added services? Do we look at enterprise services, DOS, all of that is real value, high-end margins, very low traffic, selling at $500, $600 a meg or so. That's where the real value comes to them. So it's, I get my balls busted on a daily basis, and they don't have the other CDNs around me, the guys sitting around the table, are feeling the same pinch, because we do have big incumbents that are destroyed the market from a streaming point.
So, Mike, are you selling gigabits and gigabytes, or are you selling packages and solutions?
No, the main pricing model that we're seeing, so the great thing about being an SE or a sales engineer for Mirror Image is that I'm not a sales guy, I'm an engineer. But what we typically will sell on is, price per gigabyte. And, those prices fluctuate obviously based on commitment. That's kind of the model. I'm sure many of you are customers of CDN in the room here, and you're familiar with talking to different CDNs and hearing that. We've seen it level off. We've also seen, there are still some partners out there that'll undercut and that'll actually end up offering it at almost nearly cost to get the name on their, on their docket. Or their customer list, and that makes it very commoditized. It makes it very difficult to obviously to earn the deal. But we always remind our customers when we talk to them that at the end of the day, you're not just paying for the delivery of bits and bytes. You're paying for support. You're paying for the innovation and added value services that you can possibly add on. Like I mentioned, mobile device detection. That's huge right now. Being able to deliver to multiple devices. Without having to encode, 50 different versions of your string, for example. So all those are value adds that the person you're speaking with that undercut the price may or may not be able to offer.
Okay.
Yeah, back to what I said, it's all about delivery and delivery as a service, and that will remain a commodity simply because it's viewed as pushing bits and bytes. And to the point made here earlier, it's for us who own the network, it is a margin issue. So Akamai's got the same problems. Level 3, thank God you said that, because if you didn't say it, I was going to say it. Right? Level 3 needs to stop commoditizing the market. They did it about 3 years ago, and they wrecked everybody's business. And so the problem is when you own the network, you're forced to, and if you're a public company, you have to hold margins. And so, for all intents and purposes, we turn away deals that don't meet margin requirements. And there are other CDNs who don't have those same constraints who will pick that up. And so the CDN market, the delivery market, will always remain commoditized. The larger players who have those constraints will look at delivery as an onboarding mechanism. So listen, come to me, you need delivery. Oh, that's great. Let's talk about your other challenges. Oh, hey, you need video management too. Oh, you need web content management. Oh, you need acceleration. And all of a sudden, CDN is really just a method to get people into a longer term relationship where you're solving much more deep critical business challenges. The delivery itself for us will remain commoditized. There's no way we can compete with a level 3 or now an Amazon or watch out, here comes Google. We can't compete with them on pure bit traffic prices because they'll continue to lower the price to get the business because they're looking at it again the same way. It's an onboard, I'm getting the customer, and now I'll value add sell the customer on all this other stuff I do.
Sure.
Well, I'm the owner of the companies and I'm the investor as well. So margin and profits is very important to me. So it's very simple. We never buy a deal. If customers ask us to go under our cost price or to walk away from margins, we walk away from the deal and we say, go bankrupt the competitor, right? It's very simple. So, and anyone who's diving under the prices or is accepting extremely low margins is not wrecking the business, they're wrecking themselves. So if you can only compete on price, you're dead anyway. You have to keep innovating.
Unless you're level 3.
Sorry?
Unless you're level 3.
No, they'll no. In the end, they will lose as well because absolutely anyone who's buying a deal is not a serious player in the market, right? And we've seen it in the CDN space from CDN operators, but we also see it in vendors. They just buy a deal, and we say, well, good luck, customer. Good luck with the support and innovation you get from that partner. You'll never get it.
James, your price is probably.
Yeah, we're price per gigabyte, and it's all utility based, just like you buy any other hosting service, any other delivery mechanism. We see some really interesting stuff out in the market, especially because we come at this angle of a commodity based pricing. We just pass the cost on to you guys, and we make a tiny little bit of profit on it. It works for us because, again, we don't own the infrastructure. It gives us greater reach because we can work with more providers. So then the hosting providers who are already hosting this infrastructure are actually making the money for doing it. Because at the end of the day, these are the guys that are keeping it up and alive for you, delivering your technology. What we see a lot from people we've spoke to so far, the board of commitments, the board of, tied into 10 terabytes as a minimum, the board of having to pay a high premium for something they never fully optimized. So that's really our message back to the markets. Yes, it's commodity priced, but it's fully optimized for the budget that you've got. It's not just about making high margins on whatever you push. And to touch on streaming, there's various pricing out there, whether it's different, just static delivery, or whether it's live streaming, whether it's dynamic. We just want a flat cost. We want it nice and simple, easy to predict, so that you can manage it yourselves. Otherwise, it becomes a pain.
So I'm going to use a topic of Amazon's rate card, Amazon's published rate card, to then segue into the technology. But what's your opinion of Amazon's published rate card? And that for me means that there is a kind of common understanding of what a gigabyte of data transfer is going to cost. At least there's a starting point. If you're a CDN selling above that price, it would strike me that you're pretty much going uphill in terms of trying to drive your sale there. Does that rate card help the industry, or does it just suck in all the smaller players who just want to do a little bit of dabbling in the streaming space? How's that rate card affecting the industry?
Well, firstly, their rate card, if you understand how the pricing model works in that, it's more expensive anyway, because you've got one price, you've got another price on the number of hits going back to the servers and that. To me, the Amazon sort of solution is very much for people that are entering into a market that they don't know, and they don't want to tie into anything, and they're happy with having to pay $150 for service if they need to speak to somebody from that sort of side, and comes up on their credit card on a monthly basis. Amazon, they've looked at how do they increase their additional revenue on hardware technology that they've got sitting out there. So will they ever become a serious player? I doubt it. They're going to continue with what they're doing. Yes, they're going to look at additional value-added services, but the CDN is a very small part of their business. They make money on other services that is real value to them. So to me, it's something that's just looking for some sort of space, and that as soon as they start pushing a lot of bits and bytes, it becomes extremely expensive. And that I've seen over a number of years when I've worked in the CDN business directly as well. So I know all these sort of tactics that come into play. So yeah, it's a price, but what are you wanting? What are you wanting to achieve? And really, how important is your business to you as well? Is the big thing.
Mike?
Yeah, we're actually seeing a lot of people transition from Amazon to a CDN like ourselves. We find that a lot of those people that I agree with Miles will get in kind of at the ground floor and do a little dabbling, if you will, install a media server application or whatever, and they'll start streaming, but the problem is they'll outgrow that. They'll be missing pieces for like analytics, or they'll realize as that model grows for them that managing it, both at a technical level, support level, and from an analytics and monitoring level, becomes very difficult. So as they outgrow that, then we've had many people come to us, kind of hands in the air, saying, "Okay, help us. Here's where we're at. How do we transition this to something that we don't know, that we no longer have to manage?" So that's where I see them in the space right now, and I think that's where we're going to continue to see them for some time.
Yeah, to answer the question specifically about the rate card, not as bad, right? So Amazon publishes a rate card out in the industry, and then customers start looking at it as a bellwether against which to measure you. And so if your price is different, great. Now it's a pure price discussion. So back to the commoditization. To Miles' point, that's exactly how we see Amazon as a performance. So it's basically, I start in the industry or I start in the service, and cost is more important to me than performance. And then I realize as I start to generate more traffic and the cost keeps going higher and the performance doesn't match. So Amazon sees this, right? Their performance of EC2 and S3 and CloudFront sort of plateaus and then starts to go downhill as you jam more traffic through it. Those customers will then come to us or come to an Akamai or a Mirror Image or a CDNet, and they'll go, I need a real CDN. And clearly now, the performance, which is costing me money because it's sucking, I need to get off of this thing called Amazon. I need to get to a real provider because otherwise my business is going to be hampered. So rate card, bad. Thanks Amazon for taking the level 3 approach. Amazon in and of itself, great for startups, bad for established businesses that worry about their business.
So I agree. Amazon is not a CDN. It's a bunch of resources, right? If customers want a real CDN service, they need more than just a bucket for storage and a bucket for traffic, period. So I actually can be more aggressive than Amazon on their prices, because we've seen some customers say, okay, let's try Amazon, and exactly a month later when they got the bill for the credit card, they came back and they said, how can it be possible that Amazon is so expensive? because they only look at the gigabyte rates, but they forget about all the extra expenses, like the servers, the buckets, you know, it really adds up. So the cool thing about Amazon is, the only thing that's cool about Amazon is that it's a bunch of resources. And because, like CDN.net, we're an overlay CDN, right? We use infrastructure from third parties. We can actually offload to Amazon. So the cool thing of the most challenging part for a CDN is to be able to manage the spikes once or twice a year, right? You have to build a huge infrastructure for one or two events per year. You'll never earn back that money. So the idea is that you build a basic infrastructure which can handle 95% of all your regular traffic, but you can offload to Amazon for just a few peaks. That's cheaper total cost of ownership.
I won't say that's exactly true. You know, we obviously operate, you know, for peak load and spike, but we have a tremendous, I mean, I think we're up around 7.5 terabits per second egress capacity, and so we have a significant amount of that capacity filled, you know, by companies like Netflix. So there are big content providers out there who can fill pipe, but yeah, for the most part, you really have to deal with spikes.
Yeah, I think the rate card's interesting. Everybody likes transparency. Everybody likes to know what it's going to cost them, and I think we all know from even AWS, just cloud computing, it's not easy. There's people out there building calculators to work with a calculator to calculate the cost, and you just think, why? Just make it simple, keep it easy, and it becomes a lot, you know, simpler for you guys to forecast. I think the thing about Amazon is it kind of is a starting point, and the difficulty they're always going to have is reach. They've got the big data centers, which is great. It gets you half the way there. But your people aren't sitting around the data center waiting for something to be delivered to them. They're miles away from the data center, and the towns and cities further than that. And I think that's what we have to remember when we look at sort of big clunky networks like that.
Did you see what I did there? We've gone from price to technology. So,
That's beautiful.
okay, so looking at Amazon as a sort of starting point, because people have got this picture of a computer existing somewhere in a central point with lots of streams coming out of it. You know, 96, 94 in Steph's case, when we started putting streams out, you needed localized distribution the other side of the Atlantic to deal with audiences, because long-haul, backhaul telecoms was expensive. So CDN came about to proxy services so that you could lower the cost of international telecoms. That's why they exist. I would challenge anyone who'd dispute that. So now telecoms is so cheap that you don't need to worry about backhauling stuff across the Atlantic. It's really high grade. The fibers are massively over-provisioned. So do we need tens of thousands of servers deeply embedded in ISPs all around the world, or can we backhaul it all to one central location in the middle of a desert in the States and serve it all from one location? So it's an architectural question.
Get a twitch.
I'll try as best as I can to answer it, but firstly, it's not cheap. It costs us as a telco a huge amount of money of the investment and backhauling in that. And as DT's strategy of CDN and DT strategy moving forward, we will have our own infrastructure as a service. We will have software from a CDN provided to reduce the cost that is costing us internally of traffic going internally, backhauling and that. So I disagree on the statement as cheap. It's not. It costs us, and we have to look at how do we reduce that. So for us to deploy multiple servers in and around Germany and the Central Eastern Europe regions that we have huge ownerships in, we will deploy those servers, and it won't be one server, it will be multiple servers as closest to the eyeball as possible, mainly to reduce the backhaul costings and network costings that we have.
So it's managing your own internal pricing.
That as well, yeah.
Okay.
So when we originally built our CDN, we went with more of a centralized content access point model, which we've been around since 1997, and in '97 it was probably more of a need for one box here, one box there, as close to the other as possible. However, over time, as you've talked about fiber across the Atlantic and infrastructure capacity in general, our model has allowed us to scale easier in a sense that we don't have to manage, monitor all these individual little small nodes. So we focus on increasing the capacity and the elasticity of our large content access points. So whereas our cap here in London is not just a small cluster of servers, it's racks and racks and racks of equipment. And then, of course, some child caps that are also here as well. So at the end of the day, we feel that model allows us to keep a closer eye on managing capacity in general and such.
Jason.
Yeah, so our architecture, so Limelight's network architecture is a little different. So we chose, when we built our CDN, to do a dense server architecture in geographic locations. So we built what are called super pops. We have about 30 super pops around the world, in country, in region. And the point of that was because we have an architecture that's built on peering relationships. So we peer with telcos in peering fabrics. So, Amsterdam, Virginia, San Jose, Chicago, all of the major access providers come together in these peering relationships because what ultimately that we do is we terminate traffic on access provider networks, right? So somebody who is, let's say, somebody who's a user of British Telecom ISP is connecting up to their, DSM and is being provided their, ultimately that content, Deutsche Telekom has to go out and fetch it from somewhere. Well, if we're peering with them, it's a much closer way to fetch it because our edge is next to their network edge in this fabric. So it makes it for a much quicker return on traffic, despite being cheap or easy to backhaul via TCP/IP. It's still about the experience. And so the faster the content gets to the user, the better the experience. So if you're still having to go 3,000 miles via the internet, you're having multiple hops and across multiple access provider networks. We can mitigate that through the architecture that we made by smashing the two networks together at the point of contact in these peering fabrics. So my answer to that is absolutely necessary to have more servers at the edge closer to the end user, despite how fast content is delivered. I mean, we have a robust CDN business in Japan. And Japan has some of the fastest pipes in the world. Everybody's got broadband access, but it doesn't matter. They still want that stuff as close to the end user as possible because that enables them to deliver that experience that much faster and that much better. So that's really what the point of that, that proximity is.
And Steph, you've got to focus on Europe, so your footprint's slightly different.
Well, actually, our daily business is designing CDNs for anyone who wants a CDN. So architecture is our daily business. So, and there's no single architecture that works best. Every customer has their own infrastructure, their own limitations, their own specific architecture, and you need to be able to design a CDN that fits that network. So our technology allows us to dynamically build megapops or superpops or edge CDNs or deep edge CDNs. I'll give you one example where in India we had to deploy a CDN for a content provider. They wanted their own CDN. But the backhaul capacity between all the locations was just 4 megabits per second. So imagine what happens if 5 users concurrently want to watch a stream from that location. It doesn't work. But if you put a cache in that location, it still doesn't work because the cache has to pull in a number of concurrent streams at the same time. So we trickle down content overnight. It takes 8 hours for a VOD file to get there. Once it's there, we actually feedback that it's there back to the customer portal. So when someone is in Bangalore and the file is not in Bangalore, the portal doesn't show the video. If someone is in Mumbai, it does show the video and someone can watch the video at full speed. And that goes far beyond standard caching and standard request routing because you need to have complete intelligence. You need to know per asset, per location. You need to do per user request routing analysis to understand which file and which server is the best optimal route at that point, at that specific moment. So that's much more intelligent stuff that we developed to be able to handle those scenarios. Streamzilla itself is actually a megapop / superpop architecture. Why? Because we did a TCO calculation. So total cost of ownership is a very simple drawing. So it's a curve. It's a curve that does this. This is bandwidth, and this is servers. So if you have all the servers in the central location, you will spend a lot of money on bandwidth. If you put all the servers to the edges, a massive number of servers, you go bankrupt on operational costs to manage and deploy all the servers. So the truth is somewhere in the middle. So with Streamzilla, we did all these calculations, and we found a telecom operator who has a pan-European network. So we rent dedicated capacity on the network. So it has 25 POPs in Europe, which are network POPs. We don't have to deploy servers in those POPs. But in every single country, there is a network POP with dedicated connectivity to all the telcos. So we can absolutely bypass the entire internet until the network provider, which means that we have no impact from the internet at all until we are within the telecom operator network. And that means that we extremely perform, we have really good performance, but still have very low cost because we can centralize the server park. So it's a number of data centers. So we have server POPs and we have network POPs. However, in the Netherlands it's different. We are actually deploying POPs within telecom operators, so we can deeper get into the end users. But there's another scenario which is in mobile, which is far more challenging than the internet. You can't just put an internet CDN and put it in a mobile network. You can't recognize end users by DNS or by their location. It's impossible because end users roam through networks. They do a handover between cell towers. So you have to completely rethink how CDN should work in a mobile network. You may have to actually build edge capacity in cell towers. How do you do that? How do you physically do that?
Perhaps just to chip in, Steph gave an excellent presentation at IPTV World Forum this year, I think.
Yes.
Earlier this year. If you get a chance to catch that presentation at some point, if you're giving it again about problems faced specifically with mobile CDN.
Really, if you try to get an internet CDN or a vendor CDN put in a mobile network, fails.
Okay, James.
Yes, I guess again our view is very different. Because we're on a federated model, we look at it physical versus virtual latency. So where is your audience? Do you know what sort of access points they have? Do you know how they're connecting to you? And that's where you got to figure out what's best for you. Is it having a super POP, or is it actually having multiple POPs distributed? And again, looking at the India situation, multiple POPs is the right way to go. I think from our network perspective, the ability to build your own CDN on the fly, basically choosing locations that matter to you, is where we see it's important, because as you understand your audience, you can then configure it and optimize it to make sure that you put your money in the right places.
So configuration optimization, looking at what's going on the edges, we've got an ever-increasing number of devices and formats and codecs and different types of technologies you've got to reach, and typically that's been something that's been in-house. CDNs have effectively been platforms as service providers. They've said we'll deliver flash media platform, we'll deliver a Wowser media platform, whatever it is. Increasingly we're seeing that changing to HTTP or go somewhere else, HTTP or go somewhere else. Obviously that creates boutique opportunities for specialisation. But is that the way that it's going to go? Should we just be basically dropping anything that's not encapsulated in HTTP? Is that gradually being decommissioned, and is that the will of the CDNs?
I think it mainly comes down to cost.
Question, by the way.
I think it mainly comes down to cost, really. If I look at it, if everybody is moving more towards HTTPS, it's cheaper, it's easier for them to maintain. They don't only pay this licensing fee on their per gig or so to Adobe or so. So I think traditionally everybody's more trying to push that way, and it's easier. There's not as many bugs or crashes that take place from that side. And again, it's also a cost factor for the CDN providers themselves, because they're having to deploy an infrastructure plus their software on top. They're having to negotiate with us telcos on IP transit connections, peering connections, and that's all major costs for them. I think when the telcos become more of the infrastructures and the CDNs are then using us as an infrastructure as a service, then those type of costs won't really have that sort of effect as such as currently of having to deploy masses of hardware and power and connectivity and cooling out into the marketplace.
So I've been in this space since we were talking about real media, and the first time we saw a video about this big on the screen at about 10 frames a second, we were like, that's amazing, I can't believe we're seeing that. And to this day, I don't think we've ever fully standardized on one codec, and I think everybody in the room could probably agree, or one encapsulation method for streaming. We saw Flash come in real strong. We saw it, kind of outweigh and push Windows Media to the side. We saw Real kind of go away. And now we're kind of in this situation now where I actually think that mobile devices are driving delivery formats more than any kind of desktop experience anymore. So we've got those big players like Apple and HLS, HTTP streaming, of course. I think it also varies on geographic region as well. In the US, a lot of the broadcasting partners that I work with in the audio space are still using MP3 and AAC for audio delivery. And on the video side, we're still seeing a lot, obviously, of H.264. We're seeing a lot of RTMP as well as HLS and RTSP for reaching different types of mobile devices. But I think that varies. I know I just read Stream Media Magazine, and I think they were talking about MPEG Dash and how that's evolving and such. So I'm not sure that the overall encapsulation method and the flavor of codec of the week has really truly rooted itself yet.
So just chipping, I've got a panel this afternoon which is looking at the hype of HEVC and MPEG Dash and so on. I did want to sort of chip this into this thread. Essentially, it's really a question for the panel later this afternoon, but it is very relevant to the CDNs. Is Dash something that, it's HTTP delivered? Are you effectively saying, we'll go HTTP and push the cost of innovation onto the client so they can work out what they want to deliver? You just give us bits and bytes and we'll shift them, which then bucks the trend of the very first part of this conversation about, are you shifting just gigabits or are you offering value-added services?
Exactly.
So are you going to be doing Dash? Are you going to be keeping up with all the latest formats, the hundreds of thousands of Android formats and blah, blah, blah? Or are you going to say that's their problem, talk punch to the broadcast and publish in the audience?
Yeah, so we've offered technology in our network that allows us to ingest a single stream into the network. We then re-encapsulate it, packetize it, and deliver it in the different formats like HDS, HTTP, HLS, and such.
So that's the service that the CDN's offering. You will do that innovation.
Exactly, and many others here on the panel might do that as well, but we specialize in that. We did that very early on. What that next output flavor will be, whether it's Dash, whether it's native HTML5 streaming, which is kind of a hot topic in the US.
Yeah.
What it will be, I don't know yet. I think it's still being sorted out.
Yeah, definitely, Jason.
So answering your first question. So despite all of the hype around the devices and everybody watching on iPads and iPhones and whatever, we still see the majority of our streaming traffic is RTMP. It just is. We're still delivering, I'd say probably to this day, 85% of our streaming traffic is RTMP. I know that we get caught up in the hype of what's coming next and what are the new formats, and HTTP is more efficient. It's more efficient of a streaming format. So I think we recognize that. But the problem is there's just so much legacy to get through that it's not going to happen anytime soon. Yes, RTMP will go away. As a matter of fact, Adobe believes it will probably go away. That's why they have integrated HLS and their own HTTP streaming format, HDS, into their Adobe Media Server. So, Adobe Media Server is not going away, the Flash Player is not going away, but RTMP as a format is probably going to disappear over time. Over time, maybe 10 or 15 years. I mean, there's no way to predict it. To that point, nobody can agree on a format. MPEG Dash is just another example of everybody trying to agree on a format no one's going to agree on, right? And it's ridiculous. So we have these conversations with customers all the time. Pick a format that works for your users, run with that. Much to what he said about, we've absorbed business processes. That's what really we're all about, right? You've got a content business, you're delivering content in some aspect of your business, and you do not consider the packaging and delivery of that content as part of it's not your business, it's not what you do. And so you want to offload it. So we've kind of coined a term as infrastructure as a platform. So we've turned the network into a way for companies to outsource business processes. And a business process is conversion and delivery of content. So that's what, we built the same thing. We built into our network the ability to take in one RTMP stream, shoot out any number of other formats so that a business can say, oh, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to store it. I don't have to worry about anything. You mean you'll deliver this one stream to every device that requests it? Yes. Okay, on to the next conversation. So I think that's what's happening. That's the value-added services that we're starting to offer. But from a format perspective, holy smokes, if you figure that out, give me the lottery numbers too, because I'm going to play.
Steph?
The only consistent factor in the streaming industry is that you can absolutely be assured that there is no consistency, right? Tomorrow, someone else will just invent a new protocol or a new technology or a new codec and will just completely set the market. And that actually is good for us. I mean, if there would just be one format, we would just be a very generic system. From day one, we have always supported all streaming platforms, Real, Windows Media, Flash, Icecasting. As with you, over 80% of our traffic is RTMP. 3 years ago, everyone in the industry said HTTP is going to completely wreck RTMP and it will disappear. Well, if I would have stopped supporting RTMP, I would have closed my business because I would have lost 85% of my revenue. So RTMP is absolutely here to stay because customers say, it works, why should I change it? It costs me money, I have to change my workflow. I need to support iOS, I will add HLS. So I'm not going to replace RDMP, I will add HLS, so I will add to the mix. So as long as we support all the technologies, including Dash, HLS, HCS, Smooth, well, Smooth, maybe yes, Silverlight's been kind of killed by Microsoft, but but Apple will absolutely stick to HLS. MPEG Dash will absolutely make some impact, especially in the smart TV, HBB TV business. Absolutely, as long as we support all of them, that's part of the business. That's cool. Yeah.
James?
And I think that's it. I think we've covered everything. It's the cost of transitioning to a new method. It's just the time, the effort, the development. It's just not going to happen anytime soon.
But it's something you will see that you're going to be continuing to offer to your clients rather than expecting the clients
Correct.
to come to you. Okay, cool. Before I continue asking questions, let's see if there's anything from the floor. We've got 5-10 minutes left. So, particularly from the broadcasters, anything that you see lacking in the CDN space that you're expecting to be brought to the table? Any questions you've got for the panel about when are they going to support whatever it may be? Please.
Yes, one question about the broadcasting. To throw in some more marketing terms, SDN and OpenFlow, is it something which is going to be part of the CDN industry also?
We are researching this. Yes, we call this broadcast grade, which is a marketing term as well. Broadcast grade delivery means bypass the internet because it's not reliable. There are no end-to-end SLAs in the internet, and if you want ever to the internet to be able to compete with broadcasting, true broadcasting, don't use the internet, right? Or make sure the internet is evolved into something that can actually offer SLAs and offers of qualitative service. So QoE is not the answer. We need QoS if you really want the internet to be able to compete with digital broadcasting. So we're investigating in monitoring qualitative service in the networks, sending QoS triggers into the networks, integrating with policy controllers in mobile networks, so you can actually adapt the bit rates on the fly per user based on all kinds of business rules for the content itself, for the user subscription, etc. That's all kind of logic that we are investigating and developing right now. And OpenFlow is one of the ideas that could help.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add is we're in conversations with lots of different broadcasters. So we have a partnership with Bell Canada, for example, that's up in the Canadian market. Our physical hardware is in their network, and so they're looking to us to say, all right, well, we'd really like to provide that broadcast quality delivery, using our network and to out-of-franchise users. And so they're looking to ways to extend what they're using the CDN for into their existing infrastructure, which is hugely dependent on QoS. I mean, down to the box level, right? I know what box is showing what stream or what content and when it's failing and what the experience is. And so they need our CDN to operate in that manner. And so that's something that we're continually exploring. It's not a use case that I think we run to market tomorrow with, but it's something that's being explored.
So we see a shift that CDNs perhaps a bit more to cloud kind of services.
I think so. You look at broadcasters, right? They're ditching satellite backhaul for IP backhaul. The industry as a whole is changing to focus on the network, and so I think we're being forced to then say, okay, how can we provide service that complements that and that enables that? And those are the conversations that are happening.
If you talk about clouds, I know Deutsche Telekom is really investigating with a lot of telcos to build cloud infrastructures throughout the network, which can run multiple applications, including CDN.
Yep.
And last year, I actually announced that the appliance is dead. I mean, if you're a hardware vendor, forget about this industry. It's not going to happen anymore. It's software. You need to be able to run in virtualized environments, or you're kicked out of the networks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I said before, is that we consider CDN as an application on our network. So we've just got one big cloud. We were the cloud behind the cloud, right? So, and we just built software on top of it.
Sorry, the way I see the future of the CDN providers, the Limelines, the Akamais, everybody else will very much fall away from what they're currently doing from an infrastructure. The infrastructure will be decommissioned, and the software will now become onto the telcos from an infrastructure point of view. Which is great for them. It's great for us because one is we know how to build an infrastructure. We don't know how to build a software. every telco screwed that up on a number of bases and spent a huge amount of money. So it's going to be very much the CDN providers will become more of the software provider of, right, how do I improve my technology? How do I put it across an open source sort of service? And the telco will then have this option to offer a blend of different services. And where the CDN hasn't done a deal with a telco in a region in that, then there will be this cross connection revenue share where we'll still use part of their infrastructure in that location. But we'll then we'll start seeing a lot of the telcos start doing typically what we do in the voice minutes, voice trading, and become data trading. But the CDN providers will become very much experts in software, managing the software, managing that overlay, and we'll be the infrastructure from that sort of service.
That's interesting. There's an article I wrote called State of the Stack a few years ago, which talked about stack creep up and down using the OSI model as a sort of picture on that. And actually, until your comments then, I've always seen it as a sort of two-way creep, but maybe there's a trend now to just start creeping up, telcos moving into the application space, applications moving, etc. I don't know. Any last questions from the floor? Oh, loads of them. Suddenly, yeah. Craig, sorry. Craig, go first.
Just on the broadcast side, GreedyGecko has been doing this for 14 years. I mean, in terms of we resell 6 or 7 CDNs currently. So the comments about the cycle of 15 years when you had the real postage stamp sort of things, and then we were seeing exactly the same things on coming around again as a cyclic nature on mobile. It's definitely there. The complaints about level 3, I think you guys need to embrace that. Having the opportunity to go to the market and have 6 or 7 resellers, it gives our customers the very best possible value for money and feature set they could possibly get. If you guys want to beat level 3, go beat them go up the value stack, keep doing what you're doing. It's good for everybody. On the broadcasting side, just case in point, GreedyGecko won the best webcasting award yesterday. I don't say that just to blow our own trumpet. I use that as an illustration of the point. That particular project was for Channel 4. There was 16 live streams concurrently, simultaneously for over 2 weeks. Okay, it's a fantastic project. If we want to see more of that sort of content coming through broadcasters, we need to have a look at the actual model of delivery. And I think the telcos at the moment, ironically, there's nothing against miles of DT, but possibly especially about BT, is that they are actually an obstacle to a lot of broadcasters, especially in the OTT space, where I can downlink 300 channels at the moment, but it's cost prohibitive to send them out to people. Why are we not setting up an infrastructure to the end user, to the last mile, using something like multicast?
So,
other than the business model, because you can't put a meter on it, and therefore you're not going to make any money on it. Eventually somebody in this competition.
Well, you can build multicast, but that's a topic in itself.
BT, for example, own the entire network. If they multicast enabled every switch, which is actually not that big a deal, and gave the consumer, when they sold them a box, spend an extra £5 on multicast enablement, that would make an absolute killing. Just from the cost savings.
We've done a lot of multicast trials in telco networks, and within the network we get 99% of that multicast through, given that they have invested lots of money in the routers and switches to be able to manage a lot of multicast streams, because that's very expensive. 95% of the streams actually did not get through to the end user because of the home equipment.
Yes, that's no
So spend the extra £5 and you'll pay yourself back in cost savings from those telcos. It's very, very frustrating to see this longevity of 15 years of experience in this, and the key players are actually hindering the growth.
Can I answer that correctly?
Sure.
One is we do offer multicasting in Germany for our own video direct connect. We're also looking at the whole infrastructure. We're developing our entire network, which will still take about another 5 years into a terrestrial scenario where we'll have these interconnections that it's going to be. There's not going to have some big issues. So yes, we do cause a lot of issues from that, but we're also trying to protect our network, because otherwise what we typically have is we've got the other CDNs in the market that are going through on the peering side and arbitraging our network, and we're not making any money. So we've got to always make sure that we are, content is key, but we need to charge for it, and right now we're using up a lot of money from that because of cheaper peering that's coming through. We know for it in the market, and we have a lot of complaints, or the CDN providers have a lot of complaints within Germany because they can't reach 46 or 47% of the DSL users, Deutsche Telekom customers within the network, purely because of the way that they're charging our networks. So I understand that, but it's, we also got to protect our assets and as a business, otherwise we did it as a business as well. BT, if they don't protect their assets, they did as an organisation as well. We spent a huge amount of money on infrastructures and we need to look after it.
I think another thing, another challenge that you're dealing with too is a lot of legacy equipment, first of all. I think in the UK, I think you're much further ahead than the United States is, in the sense that you've got BT as an entity, as your carrier and such, and you may not bounce from network to network. In the US, I may go to make a transaction that's 100 miles away from me and go through 12 different providers, for example. And so for them to accommodate multicasting versus here is a different beast altogether.
I'm just going to chip in because we are out on the timeline, and multicast is one of my favourite topics. Having built probably the only multicast focused CDN, we started Lynx's multicast peering network, and we were all about multicast, the home user. Peak traffic, we got to about 15% of our traffic to domestic users on multicast, and every time we got an ISP to multicast enable, it was a huge political uphill struggle. It was based on throwing a lot of unicast across their network and saying this would be better for you if you do it. So we did it, and then our own unicast buying power for our on-demand traffic went away, so we couldn't keep up. So actually it becomes more financially efficient for a business to be inefficient on the network. So the fact that's why multicast doesn't take off. Anyway, guys, sorry, there was one last question. There is a 15-minute break we can eat into, so we'll have the question, but if you want to start winding out, go for it, please.
Yeah, so my name is Jacques Lemont from Gopic, and I have a quick question for you. We just talked about multicast and live TV, and I would like to know what is the trend that you're seeing in terms of the traffic, the nature of traffic. Is it a lot of live traffic, a lot of VOD, or a lot of on-demand? And how this share is evolving from on-demand to live?
So, from a live point of view, once the agreements within Germany in particular, allowing people to start streaming or broadcast streaming more over the internet, we'll start finding a lot more live streaming will take effect. Currently, I think it's a lot more on the VOD side, but once those licenses have been agreed very soon, talking to the likes of Transceiver and WDR and ZDF and everybody else, they're all moving away traditionally from the satellite sort of side and looking at how do they get live streaming down onto these type of devices, computers, onto smart televisions and that. So us as an organisation, we know that's going to happen. It's a matter of when, and I think that when is going to be very, very soon. So we will find a lot more people are going to be coming across on the internet, and we need to make sure that we have the infrastructure and the quality is there. Otherwise, if quality doesn't work, it's a major issue.
I'm tempted to go across the table, but I'm getting a sense that people want their coffee.
I just want to pair, that's exactly what we're seeing. In North American market, our MSOs are starting to branch out, so DirecTV, Time Warner Cable are starting to offer live linear to subscribers. We're seeing billing and remuneration and account management providers come in to provide access to that. So HBO Go uses a back-end process that a number of other providers use. So you log into HBO Go, you identify who your MSO is, and then you're allowed access to the content. So again, starting to see more and more enabling access like that. But Netflix, which is largely VOD, primetime in the US, they account for about 36% of internet traffic. So VOD is huge. It's still really about on demand, but to Miles' point, I think we're getting to this point here where live linear is really going to happen.
I'm gonna have to draw a line. I've actually got another page of questions here, and they're your questions. We didn't even get onto them. So, guys, can I thank a great panel and see you later.